Hi, I'm Callie and welcome to Kapowski Reads. And I have been having like a reading slump. I have had a really lackluster, I was going to say January of reading, it's February. At this point in the month, I have barely finished about half of what I normally would have. I've had a lot of DNFs and a lot of books that I've just put down because I don't want to read them. So I suppose there may be DNFs as well. So what I am planning to do in this vlog is focus on the two books that I am partway through that I am enjoying. I am putting all of my hopes and dreams into these two books in the hope that I'm going to continue enjoying them as much as I have been. But even if I don't, with these two books, I cannot see a situation where I would end up rating them as less than 3 stars. Which for me, I'll take it. It's a win. So I am going to be focusing on two books. The first one I kind of said I was going to save for a library vlog, but I want to read it now. And I've been sorely disappointed by books of late, so I'm going to. First up is The Bennet Women by Eden Appiah Kubi. I am halfway through this book. This is, like I suspected but wasn't 100% sure, it is a Pride and Prejudice inspired story. It takes place in modern day in a university. It all surrounds the occupants of a dormitory, which is the Bennet house. So far, the story is pretty much taking the classic path of Pride and Prejudice. If you're familiar with Pride and Prejudice, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I have paused where there's the great misunderstanding, if you will. I am at the point where somebody has told our main character in this book, EJ, that somebody else did a bad thing. Did they do that bad thing? EJ certainly believes that they did. We will find out whether they did or did not. So far our main characters are EJ, who is our Elizabeth Bennet character. We have Jamie and we have Tessa. These three women live together with a whole gaggle of other women in their, it's like a house that was donated to the university. Jamie meets this dreamboat called Lee and they start this relationship. Jamie is newly out as being trans and is just ready to embrace life. And her relationship with Lee is just super lovely and adorable and sweet. And I am rooting for these kids. I mean, they're not kids, they're in their 20s. And they're very mature. And I don't mean that in a sort of condescending way of, oh, they're 20, they couldn't possibly be mature. They are, but they're more mature than I remember being at 20. They've got their heads screwed on properly, and these are the kind of students that you know they're gonna be sensible, they're gonna be okay. I've got faith in these people, I really do. We also have another main character, another female main character called Tessa. She has what I would refer to as an off-page boyfriend. We haven't met him in the story yet. He sounds very in keeping with the character from Pride and Prejudice that he's supposed to be. So our heartthrob Lee has a bestie who is the grumpy Will, who used to be somewhat of a celebrity. And he is coming off of the back of a really bad breakup with a pop starlet that I don't know. I don't listen to current music because I don't listen to the radio, and do you know what? I already have songs I like. I don't need to find more ones. But I don't know if she's supposed to be like a current pop star or not, because I don't know enough about any. But I hope that she's not, because if she is, then there's a horrible pop star out there. Because the ex-girlfriend in this book is mean, and she's so horrible. And I hope she gets her comeuppance. I kind of like that twist. It's like a modern day twist. Well, it is a modern day twist on Pride and Prejudice. And EJ and Will should not get on, and they don't at first. But feelings start to feel, and it all seems to be going quite well for them until EJ meets a new boy, and he tells her some things about Will that make her really upset. She doesn't want to see Will anymore. And that is where I have stopped in the book. That's also kind of my least favourite part of Pride and Prejudice and any Pride and Prejudice retellings, is the sort of, I don't know if she will or not, because EJ is a really smart and intelligent woman, and I kind of hope that she would look to find the truth before jumping to conclusions. But I don't know. I don't know. She really seems to trust this man that she's known for less than 24 hours. But I'm hoping that her friends can talk sense into her. And I'm hoping that Will can find some closure for his nasty breakup, or at least kind of find out what he wants to do with his life rather than what other people want him to do. I'm really enjoying this so far. It's such a cozy sort of university small town, or at least it makes me think it's a small town. It's got a very the cat is destroying the carpet. It's got a very sort of community vibe, and I think that that's sort of portrayed both in the surroundings of the university but also in the Bennet house itself. It is very, very enjoyable, and I love all of the characters. It's got multiple POVs, and so far I'm enjoying each and every one of them equally. I would love a little bit more, if possible, of Tessa, because I don't think we've gotten to know her quite as well. But if she's portraying, or at least inspired by the sister I think she is, then we probably won't get too much from her point of view. But I'm having a great time with this so far, and I'm excited to finish it. The other book that I'm excited to finish is called So Happy For You by Celia Lasky. This book was given to me by my friend Amanda. We do a sort of book swap every so often, and she gave me this with high recommendations and said that she thought that I would enjoy it, and so far I'm loving it. It is about, we've got two besties. We've got Robin and Ellie. They have been best friends since childhood, and Ellie's getting married and wants Robin to stand by her side as her, I was going to say best maid. Nope, it's not best maid. Maid of honor. Hi. The cat was in a fight and he now has some scratches. He starts the fights. He is the hooligan. He's not the victim here. He's starting all these fights with these bigger boys, and he can't fight. Oh, I love this cat. So this book actually takes place in a kind of dystopian, somewhat dystopian version of our world set in the US, where marriage is very much encouraged by the government. And if you're not married by the time that you're 27, there seems to be some sort of timer going on. And if you're not married by the time you're 35, you are marked as being rotten. So there's like a countdown to 35. I'm 37. I'm rotten, apparently. And Ellie is somewhat a bit of a bridezilla here. Robin doesn't believe in weddings, the sort of spectacle of a wedding. There are things called charms, which are like traditions, but not in the way that I would think of a good luck tradition or good luck charm. These are taking things not even up a level, up multiple levels. So Robin doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to do it. She also doesn't like who Ellie's marrying. And she and Ellie have been drifting apart for a few years, but her friend really wants her to do it. And Robin's writing a thesis on the toxic culture of the industry of marriage in this dystopian world, where it is very much the expectation that you would spend a fortune on all of these things and have a bigger wedding than the other person. And it's just so much, and it's not about, it doesn't feel like it's about love and the joining together of people who love each other. It feels like it's a show. And so she decides that she's going to become the chief bridesmaid, maid of honor, because she knows that if she does that, she'll be able to get some interesting information to put in her thesis, and it will maybe make it stand out. Instantly, we're brought into some creepy bride territory where Ellie seems to be growing more and more unhinged and is putting her bridal party into situations that are quite dangerous. in a sort of way of, well, don't you want me to have the best day? How can I trust you if you don't put yourself in danger? And it's very insidious, and I'm really worried about the characters. We also get some flashbacks to Ellie and Robin when they are children, and you can kind of see the friendship that they had when they were younger was really unhealthy, and it still feels quite unhealthy now, just far less codependent. Again, I am halfway through this book, a little bit more, and I have stopped the book just after a very ill-fated, almost surfing trip where Robin, who is terrified of the water, she joined in, but she fell off of her surfboard and felt as if somebody was holding her head underwater. There have been other moments where she feels like somebody's trying to hurt her, but she can't be certain, and I'm worried for Robin. The book actually starts with the line, "If you want to know the story of how my best friend and I ended up trying to kill each other, I should probably start with the night she asked me to be her maid of honor." Now, you know, I love a toxic tale of friendship, so I'm having such a good time with this book so far. Neither of the characters are overly likable, but I don't think that that's important in this kind of book because I'm here for the chaos. And so far, I'm getting chaos, and I feel I'm only going to get more, and I'm okay with that. So join me when I'm reading these two books. I will come back and give updates, and I've got a hopeful heart that I'm going to have a good time, continue having a good time with both of these, and kind of turn my luck around, because I would really like to have an enjoyable reading experience. I've not had a lot of good reads this month, and I would like to remedy that. I have now finished. So happy for you. I don't know if that was the intended tone for the title, but it feels like maybe it was. I don't want to maybe jinx anything, but could it be that my reading slump may be over? Could it be? Because I gave this book 5 stars. 5 shiny, shiny stars. And I did something that I don't do as often as I should, which is that I read this book entirely without reading any reviews at all, including my friend's review. I just knew that she had given it 5 stars and was like, I think you'll love this. And Amanda, you were right. I loved it. And I feel like that was the perfect way for me to enjoy this book, because even if I had read some spoiler-free reviews, this book is very polarizing, and I think that that would have perhaps marred my enjoyment. So I think I want to try to do that more often. I went into this with very little expectation and came out raving about how much I enjoyed this. This book was chaotic in just the best way. So I was halfway through this book when I started this vlog. So from the halfway point, things started to escalate very, very quickly. We learned that there had been a missing person at the wedding venue, which the venue was very quiet about. They were pretending they had no idea about this missing woman, and there were no signs. They were told to have signs up, but they didn't have any. So it's all very like, are these coincidences? Is there something going on? Ellie continues to become more and more wedding crazed in such a way that, I mean, I would have tapped out of this wedding before the halfway point of the book. I would have been like, you know, no struggling friendship is worth the absolute chaos and dangerous situations you're putting people into. And she was just a caricature of you know, that bridezilla character. I'm very lucky in that how many of my friends are married? Without doing some sort of breakdown of who is married, I think I'd probably say a good half of my closest friends are married, and I cannot remember any of them being even slightly unreasonable. And to have this character just be like the biggest bridezilla character that you would read about or see in fiction and hope to never meet in person, it was very amusing because she didn't feel like a real person, if that makes sense. So it was very easy to sort of villainize Ellie because clearly she was not all good, because no rational person, you would think, would do the things that she did. And her obsession with marriage and having the perfect wedding just seemed to grow to such an unhealthy level that had this book not been from Robin's point of view, I would have been worried that Robin was not gonna be okay. But I knew that Robin was at least okay enough to be talking about the events of this book. I loved that Robin never became a likable character either. She became a sympathetic character, and I felt sorry for the position that she was in, but at the same time she was so stuck in she had her opinions, and it was almost as if nobody could have a differing opinion to her without being sort of poo-pooed. She had her way or the wrong way. And I feel like there has to be some give and take. Obviously, Ellie took things way too far. Ellie was, you know, the baddie in this situation. But especially in some of the flashback scenes that we got, Robin was sort of less understanding and less willing to sort of give and take in their friendship. She kind of took over, and I mean, their friendship, even from an early stage, was very, very unhealthy and very codependent. I loved finding out more about these wedding charms, which were kind of like almost superstitious actions and items that sort of varied from the quite mundane and safe, relatively safe bouquets of garlic. I mean, garlic's pretty, like flowering garlic, that could be quite nice. But the charms kind of escalated to dangerous and illegal actions. I thought that this was a really interesting way of sort of making you question things that you see on message forums. Sometimes people go too far and need to be reined in. You need to be reined in. If your traditions are hurting people, stop it. But I think that because we were in a somewhat dystopian version of our world, it was almost rationalized why Ellie would go to such extremes, because it wasn't our world. I think if it was set in the world that we are in today, it would have been so much easier to just go, that woman is mad. She is just, no, needs help. And she did need help. But in this particular world that she was in, her actions were not too... they weren't as feared as I think they would have been, because some of the things she was doing had been just, they'd been so normalized by the sort of wedding obsessed society that they lived in. I loved the wedding. It was tacky, it was trashy, and I loved that. It was so fun. I think that this would be an amazing film. I don't know if that's always received as a compliment when I read a book, but I would love to see this adapted for screen. I think it would be so good. I loved the toxic friendship. There were no, I mean, obviously in a situation where somebody is trying to kill somebody else, obviously the baddie is the person trying to hurt the other one. Other than that, both main characters were awful in their own ways, but this book was glorious. It was witty, It made me chuckle. I found it so entertaining. It gave me little sort of moments of like Mona Awa, toxic femininity, but it stood on its own. I feel it would be unfair to sort of liken it to works of another author because I thought this book was fantastic and it stood by itself, and I would love to read more books like this where we have that toxic friendship, that somewhat crazed society where these actions that would be perceived as madness are viewed as like, you know, she's just trying to have her day. But I had such a great time with this book. I highly recommend it. And I am just hopeful that The Bennet Women is also a fantastic read for me as well. I still have half of that book left. But book number 1 finished and loved it. So much fun. I will report back when I have an update. I have finished The Bennet Women. I finished it this morning and I only had about 30 pages left, and it took me over an hour to finish it because I could not see through my tears. I was crying so much. I was so invested in this story. I loved it. I loved it. I was so nervous when I started this vlog because I've not had the best reading month until now. I felt like I was being too bold declaring at the halfway point through 2 books that I thought I was going to love them. And I did. So, The Bennet Women. I started this vlog when I was at the conflict moment, the misunderstanding, which is kind of an integral part of any Pride and Prejudice retelling or inspired story. You have to have the pride, the prejudice, and the misunderstanding. / use your words, ask questions. Don't just listen to this very handsome stranger try and form your own conclusions. But that part was so small that I didn't have a chance to sort of be like, oh, I don't, the books always sort of go a bit down for me when we've got that part. But that didn't happen. I think the whole conflict was over very quickly because these characters were quite different to our Elizabeth Bennet, our Mr. Darcy. They had their own personalities and their own traits that they reacted in a way that felt authentic to these characters in this book. I'm not holding up the book because I had to take it back to the library. So I don't have it to hold. And I know I'm on my low spend year, so I'm not going to buy a copy now, but I do want to, when I'm not on my low spend year, I would like to own my own copy of this book because it just made my heart so happy. This entire book was just a story about women finding themselves, finding love, finding what they want to do in life. In spite of what their families want for them, they were coming up with their own sort of, it's my life, what do I want from it? We had strong female characters. We had the most supportive, gorgeous friendship. This was such a heartwarming story too. EJ was our main character, and the main focus of the book was EJ and Will, and their will they, won't they. But I feel like there was such a good twist to it because we also had EJ was trying to discover what she wanted to get out of university. She was ready to finish her studies and was sort of thinking, where do I see myself and what focus do I want to have? And we had Will, who was coming off of this very public breakup where he had been painted as the bad guy, and he was trying to not so much rebuild his career. He was very lucky in that he didn't need that financially, but he was trying to rebuild his life and find out what he wanted and who he was out with all of that very toxic relationship he had been in. And he became a nice person. He became a joy to be around. He got friends. And I feel like the growth that both EJ and Will had was so wonderful to read about. I actually found myself going, if these two don't get together, I'm going to be okay. If it's going to just end in friendship, that will be fine too. I just really enjoyed their dynamic. And we had a whole gaggle of side characters as well, each as lovable as the last. And I found myself rooting for them and their adventures and their goals. And this book kind of gave me that women supporting women, girls supporting girls vibes, which I love in life, I love in fiction. It was so comforting to read these supportive characters. We had family involved. There were of course some not so supportive members of family, but the majority of the family members who we got to meet for each of the characters were just loving, supportive, nurturing. It was a heartwarming story. There were some real topics that were brought in as well. But overall, I was left feeling like I'd had a big hug. This book was so lovely and I loved everybody in it. I wanted everybody to do well. I felt like I got to know the characters so well in only 300 and a bit, well, 350 pages, but that's not, in the grand scheme of things, that long a book to get to know our two main characters. Plus we've got two besties, one bestie, a sister, an agent. It was almost it was wholesome with that just community feel. I also loved that it felt like there was karma involved in this book, and people who had things coming to them, well, things came to them. So I loved that sort of karmic energy from this book. It just, oh, I loved this. I feel like I went into this week thinking, well, I know what my book of the month is, because prior to this week, I'd only had one book that I had really loved. And now I have 3 books that I've really loved, and I don't know how I'm going to pick a favourite because I loved all 3, but for very different reasons. Other than, I suppose, they all did surround different aspects of friendship, but the friendship in this book, in the Bennet Women, was supportive and wholesome and lovely, and the kind of friendship that you would hope to have those supportive friends that would be your hype squad when you're trying to do something that feels like you don't stand a chance. I loved it. I definitely highly recommend this book. I recommend both of the books I read actually in this vlog. They were both fantastic. And I'm starting to think maybe I'm not cursed. Maybe I just made a few bad choices, and hopefully I'm back on track now with these just fantastic books. I would love to know what you've been reading lately and what you do to get out of a reading slump. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!